Good afternoon, my name is Trinity Boyd and this is my first interactive read aloud assignment. Today I'm going to do my assignment on the book Story of Ferdinand. It's by Monroe Leaf and it's illustrated by Robert Lawson. I'm going to go ahead and get into the book. The story of Ferdinand is set in Spain. And it talks about a little bull who's a little different than every other young bull, and it's okay to celebrate differences. And that's one thing I want to definitely pass on to my class as I read this book. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the book once again. It's called The Story of Ferdinand the Bull, and it's written by Monroe Leaf and illustrated by Robert Lawson. Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull, and his name was Ferdinand. All the other little bulls he lived with would run and jump and butt their heads together. But not Ferdinand. He liked to just sit quietly and smell the flowers. He had a favorite spot out in the pasture under a cork tree. It was his favorite tree, and he would sit in the shade all day long and smell the flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, would worry about him. She was afraid he would be lonesome all by himself. "Why don't you run and play with the other little bulls and skip and butt your head?" she would say. But Ferdinand would shake his head. "I like it better here where I can just sit quietly and smell the flowers." His mother saw that he was not lonesome, and because she was an understanding mother, even though she was a cow, she let him just sit there and be happy. Hey, boys and girls, what did Ferdinand do all day long? What was his favorite thing to do? As the years went by, Ferdinand grew and grew and grew until he was very big and strong. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted most of all was to be picked to fight at the bullfights in Madrid. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to just sit quietly under the cork tree and smell the flowers. One day, 5 men came in very funny hats to pick the biggest, fastest, roughest bull to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. All the other bulls ran around snorting and butting and leaping and jumping, so the men would think that they were very, very strong and fierce and pick them. Ferdinand knew that they wouldn't pick him, and he didn't care, so he went out to his favorite cork tree to sit down. He didn't look where he was sitting, and instead of sitting on the nice, cool grass in the shade, he sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a bull sat on you, what would you do? Would you sting him? And that is just what that bee did to Ferdinand. Wow, did it hurt! Ferdinand jumped up with a snort. He ran around puffing and snorting, butting and pawing the ground as if he were crazy. The 5 men saw him and they shouted with joy. He was the strongest and the fiercest bull of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. Boys and girls, what would you do to solve the matador's problem? And what do you think would happen if Ferdinand had never sat on that bee? Do you think he would be noticed by the matadors? The 5 men saw him and they shouted with joy. Here was the largest and fiercest bulls of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. So they took him away for the bullfight for the bullfight for the bullfight day in a cart. What a day it was. Flags were flying, bands were playing, and all the lovely ladies had flowers in their hair. They had a parade in the bull ring. First came the banderillos, with long sharp pins with ribbons on them to stick the bull and make him mad. Next came the picadors, who rode skinny horses, and they had long spears to stick in the bull and make him madder. And then came the matador, the proudest of all. He thought he was very handsome and bowed to the ladies. He had a red cape and a sword and was supposed to stick the bull last of all. Then came the bull, and you know who that bull was, don't you? They called him Ferdinand the Fierce, and all the banderillos were afraid of him, and the picadores were afraid of him, and the matador was scared stiff. Ferdinand ran to the middle of the ring, and everyone shouted and clapped because they thought he was going to fight fiercely and butt and snort and stick his horns around. But not Ferdinand. When he got to the middle of the ring, he saw the flowers in all the lovely ladies' hair, and he just sat down quietly and smelled. There's Ferdinand in the middle of the ring. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He just sat and smelled. And the banderillos were mad, and the picadors were madder, and the matador was so mad he cried because he couldn't show off with his cape and sword. So they had to take Ferdinand home. And for all I know, he's sitting there still under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers just quietly. He is very happy. The end. Now, what I wanted to ask was, can you compare, boys and girls, can you compare and tell me how different Ferdinand was from the other bulls in the story? How he acted differently or what he did differently? And what do you think the moral or the lesson of the story was? What I want you to also do is think about how you can summarize the story. Another thing that you could do would be to illustrate your favorite part. If you have a favorite part in the story, later on I'm going to give you a piece of paper and we're going to draw our favorite parts in the story. And then suppose you were in Ferdinand's place. What would a day in your life be like? I want you to write a story from his point of view. Would you rather sit in the field and smell flowers all day, or would you want to roughhouse and tussle with your friends like all the other young bulls? And then also, what did you think about the story? Kind of tell me some examples of what you liked and what you didn't like. And then I want to ask you, would you recommend this book to anybody else? Some of your friends in your other classes? And then I want you to think about a summary of this story. If you were to tell somebody about this book, how would you begin it? And the lesson I got from this book as I was reading it was that that it's okay to be who you are, and it's okay to accept others and how they are, and that differences is what makes us unique. So thank you for listening to my first book talk. Once again, it was on the story of Ferdinand the Bull by Monroe Leaf and illustrated by Robert Lawson. Thank you.